Welcome back to part 2 of our discussion with retired Major Crime Detective Dave Christie. In part 1, we talked about the early parts of Dave's career in the New South Wales Police and how he became a specialist fraud investigator. We're now going to talk about some of the larger investigations Dave led, his work with Corrective Services, and how to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of fraud. I also want to touch on how fraud type crimes are starting to infiltrate major crime investigations. But anyway, welcome back, Dave.
Thanks, Gary.
Your Corrective Services time, that was a little sideways move from the police for 4 or 5 years, was it?
Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a side hustle. I'd done a, 6 or 7 years at the fraud squad so 94 through to 2001.
Yeah.
And an old mate of mine, Glenn Ross, was heading up the Corrective Services Investigation Unit, which is it's a police unit, but they were on special leave without pay in those days, and investigating criminal allegations, principally against correctional officers.
Right.
And you can imagine in the jail system, there's no shortage of.
That would have been a tough gig.
Well, there's plenty of guests of Her Majesty that are ready to make an allegation about a prison officer.
Yeah.
So most of them were. There was no issues, but occasionally there were some dramas.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they needed an independent body to investigate it, and the findings used to be reported back through to the Ombudsman and ICAC, etc. They were the major people that had an interest in it. But yeah, Glenn was a vacancy came up there. Glenn had basically asked me, if I was interested, there'd probably be a spot there for me. So I went over there, and then he left soon after and retired. And Ken Middlebrook was the guy I was reporting to.
Yeah.
Lovely bloke. And I just sort of put it out there and said, rather than going and recruiting another substantive inspector, I was a sergeant at the time.
Yeah.
Would you give me a run at it?
That was a good idea.
Yeah, well, financially, there was a good incentive to do it, because there was always the money at the commission rank was good, but it was an opportunity for me too. And Ken, I think, found it easy enough working with me. So rather than having to
blood a new person,
and you never know what you were going to get.
Yeah,
you've got some of those real old crusty old inspectors that were going to come in and make life difficult. I think he knew it was going to be a bit easier working with me, so he gave me an opportunity, and that went on for 5 years.
And how were you received there? Because cops in prison system are not well received by the guests. But then you're also you're investigating Corrective Services,
exactly.
So you're in a sort of difficult
it was
position.
A bit of a balancing act. Look, I can remember lining up for the interview for the job, and sitting outside Long Bay, and thinking, what am I doing? I mean, there's something about jails that doesn't sit right with anyone, let alone cops.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't believe I put my hand up to go and work in here. So it was a bit of an unnerving feeling, but it was amazing how quickly that feeling left, and how it became your workplace, just like any other workplace.
And so you were based in the prisons?
Yeah, not right in with the all the guests.
You weren't in C Wing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we used to go in there often enough to talk to them. But every jail's got its administration areas, and we just had offices there. But we moved right around the state, and it wasn't. You're not always well received, but I think once they realised that you weren't there to do a hatchet job, you were literally there to, as I say, do an independent investigation. And for those of them that had no issues, they invariably came out with a clean bill of health.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't, but not a large proportion. But the amount of work it goes into an investigation where someone's exonerated is quite often just as
exactly. It's
just
you don't know where the evidence is going to take you.
No, that's right. And you knew that they were going to be fairly heavily scrutinised. particularly if it was something high profile.
For someone, a career police officer like yourself, to be exposed to the workings of the jail and that, what were the observations you came away with? Is it a tough gig for the Corrective Services officers?
I came away from it full of admiration for them. I think the Corrective Services is part of the judicial chain that gets forgotten.
Right.
The cops lock them up, put them before a court. Judge and jury does their bit, and then they go to jail and everyone forgets about them.
We wipe our hands of them.
Somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
And those people are the correctional officers. And quite often they're very invested in what they do. And I mean, to be honest, you've got to be fairly well engaged when you think about the individuals you're managing in there. Some do it better than others, but I always thought they were a good group of people. Yeah. And I used to talk to Snake about it now and then because he had a ongoing love affair with the jail system, with the amount of clients he had in there over the years.
Yeah.
And he was very close to Ron Woodham.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. He just passed away recently. He finished up the first correctional officer to become the commissioner.
Yeah.
And he always used to say it's a library of intelligence. Jails are libraries of intelligence.
This is Snake talking about from a police point of view.
Yeah, because he had worked at that unit in his past at one stage as well.
Ah, right. Okay.
So he knew the value of it. But the main issue was could you actually drive some of that intel out of the system, because correctional officers are walking around with all this information in their head, but unless you actually download them, they're only looking at what they're hearing in relation to how it impacts their day in the jail system.
But they'd know who's associating with who,
exactly,
and who's in whose clique.
And that's the thing. A lot of these guys are just in there curling their heels and developing a new business plan for when they when they leap back out. And no doubt they've got a new network of sidekicks to go with it. So they were in great sources of information, and if there was any operations that were going to be run in jails, there were certain certain correctional officers that you used to utilise in the planning processes beforehand. The ones that it was always the ones that really know what's going on. And they had their intel officers.
Yeah.
And Woodham was always very good as far as assisting the police to continue, investigating crimes whilst people were inside, and and utilising the system.
Well, I think we're naive if we think that just because someone's been put away, that's the end of their reach in terms of crimes they commit.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just another ecosystem entirely in there, But, and I just think of it as I say, it's like they go.
Did it help you as a police officer coming out of that?
I certainly think it helped me as a in a managerial sense, which is without sounding too.
You've always been one of those manager types. Get out on the street. You've never seen an angry man. What are you doing?
In the management helicopter. Yeah. But it was good to work in another organisation and see how they did their business, and where they did it well, where they didn't do it so well, and just managing your own group, and we were very autonomous, so we were literally given free rein, as to what we did. Had some terrific detectives around me, and a couple of them, one of them's still going up there, Matty Keogh up in Byron Bay. I think he's the crime manager up there.
Yeah, that's right.
Really, really good people. And as I say, once I formed some friendships there with officers that I've maintained over the years, and as I say, once they realised you weren't there to cut the legs out from under them, most of the time they'd work with you, particularly in the senior levels. I think we used to put a few bushfires out for them, just because it was you were able to go about your business relatively professionally. I remember I was trying to think the other night of some of the funny things. I can remember we were getting a statement off one of the inmates who was, as far as we were concerned, was a star witness to this. Must have been a decent flogging or whatever.
Yeah.
And his statement was provided saying, I, Prisoner X, I can't remember his name, on the 14th of February 2002, did not see nothing, hear nothing, or do nothing. That was that then became colloquially known as the Schultz Defense. So whenever I'd talk to the troops and someone was just sitting there saying, no, saw nothing, we say, no, so-and-so's taken the Schultz Defense.
Hogan's here.
Didn't see nothing, do nothing, hear nothing. Funny.
Well, but it's from the crook's point of view, it's a dangerous area, isn't it? Like it's a dangerous environment.
I think it's a dangerous environment for crooks.
Yep.
For cops working in that system, it's just intriguing.
Yeah.
It is. I think I think police would enjoy more than most other people because they actually just get to see the way these guys operate.
Well, it has to help you, like seeing how they operate in their environment, because that's their environment. Getting an understanding of it.
And I mean, there were some terrific jobs done by the police within that solved some pretty heavy duty crimes. So what I tried to do was get away from just doing that standard sort of internal affairs type work, and really try and broaden it into a liaison type situation.
That's towards the latter part of my career, or during my career. That's how the unit was thought of, as a liaison between that conduit between corrective services and the police.
So you had to have that understanding of, I know what the cops want, but I've also got to balance that with what is possible for corrective services to do in response to the request. And then, so that, as I say, was a balancing act. But, to be honest, that was the part of it I actually enjoyed. I enjoyed the people and as I say, the interesting characters, and that goes down to the crims as well. I mean, there were some bloody interesting characters.
It's an environment that we don't get to see, and I think that's why people are interested in it. So it would have been an interesting 5 years and a nice.
It was. I knew it was time to go. I found myself one day staring at the aesthetic beauty of the main gate at Long Bay, and I thought, You've been here too long, Dave.
Or you start walking up and down in.
You start pacing in your office, wall to wall.
Wall to wall. Yeah. Time to move on. So when you moved on, back to fraud.
Well, there was an opportunity there. Yeah, timing's everything, and my old mate Cole Dyson had ascended the throne as the superintendent there.
And Cole was there. Just we talk on Cole a bit, because he was, you look at certain people have that reputation of being the expert in that field, but Cole Dyson really owned the fraud side of things.
Someone coined the phrase "the Lord of Fraud." It wasn't. Well, Cole spent most of his career at the fraud squad, and in one shape or another. And as I say, finally finished up the commander there. And you're right. When you've got complete product recognition when his Christian name only had to be mentioned. They'd say C. Cole. No one had to identify him by any other by his surname. And he terrific boss and a good friend as well. But Cole actually looked more like a Macquarie Street specialist than a 40-year veteran of the police force. He was always immaculately groomed.
But he could go undercover as an accountant.
Oh, he could have. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. But he really was the knowledge base in that squad for all that time. Yeah. And, we would often laugh because as I was developing a physique more akin to some of those...
This is a podcast, Dave. Until they see the pictures, you can describe yourself any way you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I've come on since I retired, spending literally minutes in the gymnasium.
that 5 minutes low impact rowing is obviously paying off.
I used to walk past the gym downstairs now and then and poke my head in there just to get a smell of the sweat. You've taken me off my train of thought there because I talk about.
Sorry,
Cole.
with Cole Dyson. Then you're starting to talk about your physique.
Yes, that's right. Now Cole, as I say, was without doubt the knowledge base in the place, and he used to market. That's right. I was going to mention the fact that the fraud squad had always had this sort of reputation of a bunch of Poindexters roaming around in pinstripe suits and bowler hats and So I actually said to him, look, we should play up to this as opposed to resenting it, because I said if they get a sniff that really annoys us, which all the young blokes used to get the shits with it.
So you're laying claim here to the bloke that made fraud investigations sexy.
Well, mate, I think I did. When I bought my first set of braces. I remember wearing those, and I was copping a hard time.
Pen in the top pocket.
Graham Morgan actually stood up for me. He said, I think they look quite smart. It was one of the few nice things he ever said to me.
So was yours stuff these homicide blokes in their dark suit and the tie?
Well, that's right. So I said, we're just going to have to play up to our image. And so, Fraud Squad Friday always used to get a bit of a laugh. Probably brought me undone in the end. But Cole would use his marketing strategy was, if you come to the fraud squad, well, you will be in a suit and you will be in a tie, and but bring your passport with you because you'll be doing some travelling, and he would always encourage it and support it, because that was part of the. If there was going to be any allure to coming over there, that was it.
Well, my observation from afar was that a lot left the fraud squad too, because you really develop some skills. It's like training a fighter pilot that ends up leaving.
Exactly right. Yeah. It was we used to call it the departure lounge for a while.
Yeah, because there was the corporate world. The skills that you had were.
Well, I can actually remember addressing a contingent of police from outer Mongolia. So they used to get me out and about now and then to do a bit of spruiking the product, and all these people in their like Politburo outfits, the same outfit. Anyway, someone finally spoke up and asked a question, because I'd been talking about that being an issue. You're losing your skill basis because the private sector come and poach people. And I said that's our biggest problem, is being able to retain people. And some little smart-ass Mongolian detective put his hand up and said, how long have you been at the fraud squad? And I said, 30 years.
That takes me back to the warning from part one. You pay out on yourself as much as everyone else.
It was a bit of a laugh. But like if I've got to put shit onto people, I've got to be able to wear it myself. So sometimes I get in first.
You check your emails each day, waiting for the offer. And where's everyone gone?
Exactly. So look, Cole was, he went the distance, 41 years or something.
But I think, and this is something that if people could understand those specialist skills, we would do homicide investigations where we'd come across something that was obviously, or potentially the motive for it was a fraud or whatever. And quite often the strike forces I'd be specifically asking for some fraud squad people to come in, because they had that skills, had that understanding. Like, you could tell a person that doesn't really understand fraud investigation, show them the balance sheet and all that. I could stare at it all day and nothing's going to jump out
That's
at me.
Right.
Take it to a fraud person and bang.
The Bruce Burrell inquiry, there was two people murdered in that. It certainly had very strong financial motives.
That was Nigel Warren and Dennis
Bray. That's right. And
sorry, they weren't the crooks. They were the they were the investigators.
If you're listening. But John Fogarty was our forensic accountant.
Yes,
at the fraud squad, and
he
finished up getting a public service medal.
Yeah.
Which if anyone deserved that sort of recognition, it was John. But he did all the forensic accounting on that job, and I spoke to the judge. I had cause to talk to him about something at one stage or another, and he actually said that John played a very significant role in that case and getting that guilty verdict. It was the financial reconstruction and analysis was second to none.
I remember he was the go-to person, wasn't he? That financial, that forensic accountant.
Happily retired out there land now, but just a quietly spoken, humble man, but he was very.
He had that persona that you wanted for a forensic accountant.
Oh, as I said, straight out of Central Casting. I used to sit next to him, and
the numbers fascinated him.
Well, he had such a ordered and almost peaceful existence. He just went about his job, and I sat next to him because I quite enjoyed his company. but I was doing the inspector's job.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was the HR moments. So, and we had a few along the way, with the.
Yeah.
So I'd have a box of Kleenex on my table, and someone would come up and say, "Righto, we're off to the crying room again." I said, John said, "I can't stand listening to these tales of woe. You'll have to take them into another room." So as soon as I picked the box of Kleenex up, he'd know where we're going and give him some peace and quiet. But he was talking like he's dead. He's not. But a terrific bloke to work with.
Yeah, yeah.
And as I say, they're the people you meet along the way that they're just very much a part of the team.
Yeah.
And we brought him back as good as he was.
Yeah.
From retirement to work on Carnarvon.
Right,
further
okay.
down the track.
So with Carnarvon, that was the Health Services Union.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because that's attracted a lot of public attention, and there was a few moving parts with it. But when was that? That was 2012, around
about that time. Yeah.
2012.
Yep.
Because that was where normally it's a homicide or the robbery squad or that out the front. You guys were really thrust into the spotlight with that one.
We were, yeah. The boys got the award for the CI Investigation of the Year with that one.
Yeah,
and they deserved it too.
Tell us about the
well,
job.
it was a. I guess you had to understand the environment we were working in with it. It had a huge political backdrop.
All the dynamics.
Yeah, and so Julia Gillard was the Prime Minister. But I think she was leading a minority government, as I recall.
Yep.
Craig Thompson was a Labor MP, and he was in the spotlight with this.
Yep.
And quite clearly there was going to be political advantage to the other team if Thompson was
found to be guilty of a criminal offence.
He was going to lose his seat, and that would have triggered an election, and so there was all that going in the background.
Yeah.
Well, nothing excites senior executives of the department more than a Prime Minister's ringing them up and finding out what's going on, or So I mean, there was obviously some. I'm not suggesting the Prime Minister rang up, but certainly there's some push down. There would have been, and there was a very regular briefings taking place, and of course it was all being done in the media spotlight. Kate McClymont was very heavily involved with the Herald. Kathy Jackson was the damsel in distress that was driving it.
And
she had a huge profile.
It was the essence of what the wrongdoing was, that they were using union funds.
Yeah,
fraudulently.
Yeah, so that's how it came to pass, was the fact that the union was just being pillaged financially.
Yeah,
and it got the big traction because of Thompson, and the allegation was he was on the gravy train.
Yep.
But Michael Williamson was the big boss that was running the union.
Right.
And he became more or less our target.
Yep.
But the main issue with that particular job was being able to get sufficient evidence. We had allegations that were being made by Jackson, but you still had to get enough evidence to be able to get a warrant, to be able to get in and examine their books and records.
Yeah. And from my memory, there was a couple of high profile when the warrants were done. It was on the front page.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had certainly Thompson's arrest was on. I think Cole actually let him out. It's been a while since we've seen a superintendent lead him out, but that was he's getting towards the back end of his career, so he
dressed in his black overalls, orange suit,
go out with a bang. So I said, I remember he's.
Sometimes you got to lead.
It's not often you have the arresting officer comes back out and then does the press conference as well. So Williamson, he was. He was an old president of the ALP. Yeah. So he held very senior positions
all
there.
the political.
Yeah, and I mean, as it turned out, Williamson was charged with a whole range of dishonesty offences, and there's no doubt that he and his family had been living a pretty good life.
And when we talk fraud situations, that's where it is such a despicable crime. Like the union, if anyone shouldn't be stealing funds, it's someone heading up the
Well,
union.
that was the way it was cast too. You know, I mean, this union's representing some of the lowest paid workers in the land, and I mean, when you look at it now with COVID and that, you know, it's quite obviously an honourable profession. I'll tell you, it was quite interesting. Gerard Hayes is the boss of the union down there now.
Yeah,
and he invited me back this year to come in and then they just walked us through what they've done since the Williamson era.
Safeguards.
And how well they're going and the schemes and plans they've implemented for their people and health plans and. I think there's they get free dentistry now, and the bank accounts never looked healthier, and it's all accounted for, and that type of thing. So they never ever want to go back to that, but they've never ever forgotten
what happened.
That
the members,
their good name was dragged through the mud.
Yeah. Well, now with Craig Thompson, he was never charged.
Not in New South Wales. The Victorian. See, that was but the union was a national union, but it had various state entities, so it was quite complex the way it was put together. But even though Thompson lived in New South Wales and was a MP on the Central Coast, the suggestion, as we saw it, was the criminal activity had taken place in Melbourne,
right? So
for him,
right?
So anyway, the Victorians ended up charging him, and I didn't get any more involved with his demise outside of when they were coming up to do execute search warrants themselves or extradite him or whatever was going on. I can't remember now whether there was an extradition to Victoria or not, but.
With something as high profile as that, with so much riding on it, like we're talking political because of the government at the time, that's where we needed those specialist skills. That's the very type of thing where you need to roll out the Colt Dysons and
that was right. There are always these unusual jobs that come in that they couldn't pigeonhole them, and we would invariably get them. I could use the example of Marcus Einfeld.
Yeah, tell us about that one.
Well, that was Strike Force Chatter.
That's right. The parking.
And it's such an innocuous thing. But here was a federal court judge.
Yeah.
So of course it got a life of its own, and the fraud squad got that job. And if you're talking about was there any interest from above in that job? I mean, there was a briefing note going out twice a week on that. You'd swear it was.
Well, it's and for people that don't know, it was a speeding ticket that he wrote off, filled out an affidavit.
Yeah, I think, and then look, if my memory serves me correctly, I could be a little bit wrong here, but it was telling fibs in the witness box, I think. In relation to it, something along those lines.
But he ended up doing some time.
Yeah, he did. He went to jail.
Yeah, so it was a real statement, that.
Yeah, and I mean he was a. Inverted commas national treasure, that's the way he was described. And obviously he'd done a lot of great things in his life, but got brought undone in this particular circumstance. But that was the kind of job they'd say, right, well, who do we give this to? All right, well, we'll give it to the fraud squad. So I used to take a little bit of solace in the fact that even though sometimes we used to, they'd have a laugh at our expense about
that. I never laughed at you, though.
But if it was those kind of jobs that they needed to have them done right,
exactly,
have them done properly, with the appropriate attention to detail, well, they knew who to go to with. They'd set
for that the armed hold-up squad or the fraud squad for that one, maybe.
Well,
maybe the fraud squad.
Exactly, but when you're getting pressure to get things done, it doesn't really matter. The only difference, I suppose, is the risk factor in the arrest,
Yeah.
So I remember that with when we arrested Felix Lyle.
Yeah, talk to us about that now. The name Felix Lyle.
Well, Felix Lyle was the president of the Hells Angels, and he was probably about as heavy a duty crook as there was getting around in his day.
I locked someone up for attempting to murder him.
I don't think there was any shortage of people that would probably had that task, but he was pretty good at evading it.
Well, this bloke was Sean Wakewood. He's deceased now, but he went to JB's Bar and Grill to shoot Felix Lyle over a dispute. And
as you do. What are you doing tonight? Oh, look, I've got to go out and shoot Felix Lyle, and I'm going to go down for a beer.
Yeah, well, that's pretty well how he operated. But he went to JB's Bar and Grill, and unfortunately, there was a bloke there that looked like Felix Lyle. Felix was there, but another bloke was there with a ponytail, and Sean Wakewood fired 7 shots through the window, hit him, and didn't kill him, but severely injured him.
Yeah, that's bad luck, isn't it, for him?
Yeah, just wrong place, wrong time. He was a New Zealand guy that was just over here seeing his father. And,
you wouldn't have thought there was 2 people around that looked like Felix. No, there you go. Separated at birth.
But anyway, the fact that Felix Lyle, like when you're talking organised crime, that's what we're talking at OMCG. Right. And how did he become involved in this fraud?
Oh, well, we had a Strike Force ARPIA running, which was a looking at mortgage fraud, and this was right through that global financial crisis. So toxic mortgages had just about brought the financial system to its knees.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
And we were doing some work analysing the various loan books of banks, etc., because they'd come to us saying, we're starting to get worried about these loans, and we had blokes like Michael McGurk involved, and Terence Reddy, who was a really good fraudster, and of course Felix Lyle bobbed up in it. And I guess why I bring Felix Lyle up was that was the point in time where the fraud squad went from it was a good example that you don't have to be the white collar suit and tie type crook. There were good heavy duty crooks getting involved because the money was so good.
Well, we were talking about that before we recorded the podcast, and people aren't robbing banks now, and
high risk occupation, robbing a bank when you can pull a mortgage fraud.
Yeah, and that's right, and they don't get punished as much for the frauds.
And I don't ever see that changing. I mean, you walk into a bank with a shotgun and somebody's life's in danger. I understand you're going to be getting a heavier sentence than being armed with a staple gun and a sawn-off HB pencil. But Felix was. Well, one thing I did like about Felix was the way we arrested him in the end, was that even though we'd all of a sudden we were starting to lock up some more heavy-duty crooks, he was still arrested by appointment on the steps of the Sydney Police Centre with a handshake with his lawyer in tow. I remember a couple of old cops ringing me going, good to see some things never change.
He would have been surprised. That's not how I normally get arrested.
No, that's right.
It's a classic. See, that's bringing that reputation of the fraud squad.
He was dropped off at the police station by Tony Vincent.
Yeah.
You got to get a lift down with his mate. Up you go. Anyway, he finished up he got a fairly decent sentence, and I think he's since been deported.
Right.
So, but yeah, that was a very... John Flores and Gordon Abinja did that job.
And how were they doing it, like with the fraud, like breaking it down?
Well, without being too critical, in most cases the lenders weren't paying too much attention to
not
the properties that were being used to secure loans.
Okay.
And you had false valuations being used. You had land title documents being forged. The bottom line was getting to a point where they were taking possession of a property, inverted commas, and then they would borrow against it.
Right.
And then when they would default on the repayments, the bank would go to say, well, foreclosed. Well, hang on, where is the property?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, or if it did, it's nothing like it's been portrayed to us.
And what sort of scale was this on?
Well, we pulled a whole bunch of investigators in from right across all the banks at one stage when we'd done a fair bit of analysis and said, righto, if you're dealing with any of these particular entities, go back and have a closer look because they're dodgy.
Indicators there.
And they stopped those loans. At that stage, there was something like $50 or $60 million out the door. I think overall with that strike force probably was up around the $150 million mark. So it wasn't chicken feed. But we had you had people working in the business, so there were people in the bank that were assisting in
so there's a lot of people involved. It's not just one person being corrupt. A lot of people have. And how would they get the people involved?
Well, maybe some of them were lenders, so they would be the in charge or mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
So I've got to be careful there. It's not always just the people in the bank, but there's certainly people in the chain, the lending chain, who are off, and as long as their part of the deal was secured, though they didn't really care.
So they got their cut.
Everybody got their everybody was getting an earn out of it. But at the end of the day, it was, I don't know, where they may have rationalised it to themselves at the end, saying, well, it's only the bank that's losing money. And that's what fraudsters do a lot.
Was there another a big fraud matter like insurance fraud that was going on with cars and that was...
that was the last job I did before I retired, which was Strike Force Ravens.
Yeah. What was the go there?
I'll give the minister his due there. Victor Dominello was, I think he might still be in the chair there actually as the services minister. It was pretty obvious to anyone who drove a car that the price of green slips was out of control.
Yeah.
You're paying like up around $1,000 or something.
Yeah, it was getting
for your personal injury stuff. So he pulled a bunch of interested parties together, and that was the Law Society, the insurers, the police, the AMA, all the various players in the system together, and said, right, well, what are we going to do about it? As far as this has got to stop. You can't just keep putting the price of premiums up because all these people are having minor car accidents and claiming that that's right. It literally was that minimal impact accidents, whiplash injuries, lottery win, So our advice to them at the time was, well, you're going to have a media strategy, which is if we're going to go out there and put the effort in to arrest these people, because a lot of the time it's seen to be it's the insurance company's problem.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't in this case because you needed to make an example. So we had the media strategy going where anyone we got in our sights that got charged, we certainly had a big media fanfare, head on a spike type arrangement, you parade them around and, shame, shame, shame. But nothing pisses people off more than seeing people rorting a scheme like that, which is meant to be to fix people who are injured.
Yeah.
And these people are just using it as a lottery win.
Yeah.
So we were saying, if you're having a car accident and then going to the lawyer before you go to the doctor, we're interested in what you're up to. So,
but it was a good message to put out. Like if it was too easy.
It's not often you can run a job where you can quantify your success. Certainly in financial terms, but that was one you could because the cost of green slips came down from 900 to 400. I think they might have dropped again.
How many people did you uncover with it?
There was an enclave out in southwestern Sydney that were very active, you'd have a situation where there's 6 or 7 in a minibus, and that bus runs up the backside of another car.
Yeah,
everyone in the bus was injured except the driver. So he's at fault. Then you got 6 claims from everybody, and they were using it. It was organised, and it was being used to fund people. Some people coming from overseas. That was the way you got your financial start. We certainly had that very clear evidence that it was. Don't bother getting a loan. You come over here, and we'll do a third party number. You'll get your bit, and off we go.
Well, it is an important thing that had to be addressed, isn't it?
Well, you were talking hundreds of millions,
and you're right in what you said that people just think, and my mind before you start breaking it down was, well, it's you sort of laugh at someone ripping off the insurance company, but that's the
way they justify it. But we all pay.
Yeah.
So they're saying, it's only the insurance company.
But it's not because the premiums go up for the green slip. And
so they end up changing the system down here.
Yeah.
And now there's no lottery win now for a minor accident. You get your injuries attended to.
Yeah.
And any sort of lump sum payments come much further down the track depending on the seriousness of the injury.
And that's the other thing too, Dave. If you're getting paid for stuff that's not really impacting on you, you're getting money. There's some poor person that's really got a genuine injury that's probably not getting paid what they should get paid. Because
that's right.
Yeah.
But it's an industry.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the plaintiff lawyers, you've got the independent medical examiners, one who works for the one side, one who works for the other.
How dare you speak ill of the lawyers?
Well, everyone's in there making a quid, and it's I think that's where it gets forgotten. That.
Well, it does get forgotten because who wants to report this?
That's right.
Yeah.
And Arthur Katzpajamas was running the show then, and I'd give him his credit. He was prepared to take that one on, where perhaps sometimes others wouldn't. They might have been looking for a reason not to take a job on. But I think he actually saw that there was some benefit in it, and it's not always about just locking up the crook and putting them in jail. If you can actually see there's going to be a result at the end that's going to impact positively across the community, and it really. Every driver in New South Wales should probably say thanks to him because it's saving him money.
Oh, well, that is making a difference if you can change the landscape like that. There's another crime that you mentioned, and I hadn't really given much thought to it being part of what you would do as a fraud, but these relationship scams. Now, talk us through that. Like you mentioned, there was one where you're stopping someone jumping on a plane going overseas to find love of the life. What's the story
those
there?
Ones where you if you looked at ScamWatch, which is a government site, it goes into the various scams, and then they break it down into 17 different subcategories. So I mean, there's that many different ways these people can rip people off, but the romance ones were probably the saddest ones.
Playing on people's love and emotions.
Well, a lot of them are they're lonely, and they're going onto these dating sites, and that's where the crooks are hovering, and then they'll open up some dialogue. Things get pretty hot and heavy pretty quick, and the next thing they're wanting to take the individuals away from the dating app or the safety of the dating app
because they're committed to each other.
And then they start talking to them via email or text or whatever, and next thing you know, they're asking for details that you wouldn't be giving anyone you didn't know, and they've never clapped eyes on these people, but the relationship seems to be roaring along. No doubt they've been given photographs that not necessarily of the person they're talking to. And then there'll be requests for money. I'm on my way out to see you, but you wouldn't believe it.
My account.
I've hit a hurdle along the way. I'm crook. I'm in hospital. A relative needs this, and all of a sudden they're starting to unload good money after bad.
It's just and playing on people's vulnerabilities and loneliness. You've got to be pretty evil.
And it happened a lot with people in rural areas. The isolation of probably living out.
What's the chance of meeting someone? Yeah,
that's right. They're lonely, and there's it's not like there's people roaming past every day to talk to or whatever it is. And of course, they get online and off they go. And as I said to you before, there was a case where we had a woman actually at the airport ready to take off and she was going to find a way to some godforsaken place. I can't remember where it was.
Roughly how old was she?
She would have been like in her 50s, and her kids and extended family were mortified that she was taking off to go and meet this, and actually had said to us, we said, no, it's no doubt it's a rort. Can you go? I had police out at the airport trying to talk her in from as she went.
So even with the kids warning her,
police
turning up.
Yeah, there's no way she could be convinced that it wasn't legitimate. And fortunately, nothing physically happened to her. She did her money.
Yeah. Was it Asian country or?
No, I think it could have been around the Nigerian part of the world.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And she got away with a physical well-being, lost her money, but there's been cases where people go overseas and they've don't come back.
Yeah. And it is like we sit and laugh, but when you look at it breaking down, they are playing on people's vulnerabilities.
Oh,
and
exactly.
This is how they're making their money, so they're very skilled at it, and they're hitting all the right buttons and keep them drip feeding them, and then promising them a future, and then ripping them off.
Yeah, it's sad.
What sort of money do they lose out on?
Oh, well, this is the other thing. It's very underreported, we believe.
It's
I'm
not
talking like I'm in the job. I'm not. But at the time, we believed it was very underreported because
you're not going to put your hand
people
up.
Are ashamed, or embarrassed about what's gone on. They did have a successful prosecution. There was a woman out in the western suburbs. I can't remember it doesn't really matter anyway. But she was taking a lot of older men to the cleaners.
Yeah.
And they actually ended up running a proactive job and arresting her, convicting her, and
multiple. She was running.
Yeah, she had fellows, old fellows, parting with the hard earned on a industrial scale.
Yeah.
And some of them, fortunately, put their hand up and gave evidence, but some of them wouldn't.
Well, I would imagine that the majority wouldn't want to.
That's right. You don't want to be exposed to the ridicule, I guess, or the embarrassment. But so I mean, that's one thing about the crime of fraud. It's the diversity of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't discriminate in terms of it can affect anyone. And what we're always looking for. You take your hat off to some of them. They're just the ingenuity.
They're trying to one step ahead, and just the frauds that can occur on your phone, where you're getting. I don't know if you have had it, but in the last COVID lockdown, I reckon I get 1 or 2 messages a week saying your parcel is ready to be picked up.
Yeah,
hit on this. Now, what's going on there?
Yeah, well, it isn't there, but they're wanting to get a hold of. Personal details,
Well, they one in the last month or so. I won't name who it is because it'll embarrass her. But a relative of mine, an elderly relative, received a phone call from someone, and look, there's been a mistake at the bank. We can fix it up. Someone's trying to take money out of your account, but if we just get your password, date of birth, this, that,
that's right.
And they gave it. And when we spoke to the person about it, going, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, but they seem so nice and so genuine.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think many families wouldn't have had a case where it's impacted somewhere down the line. Everyone, it's either young people who are just a bit naive or the elderly people who are
trusting.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lovely person. But
I think they do a better job these days about getting the message out as far as, don't give any of this information out. Banks won't ask you for this information, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's constantly there. It's just a matter of there's always going to be somebody.
Well, but you still get the banks, or they ring up and we just need to confirm who you are. What's your date of birth? And I'm not going to give you my date of birth. You rang me. But that's,
Well, the old rule of thumb usually is unless you know who's on the other end of the phone, don't tell them anything.
Yeah, I've had someone for the past 2 years phone up, is that Lee? And for 2 years, it's going on. And each time I go, no, it's not Lee, for the first 6 times, and I realise, it's something going on. So now I say, yes, it is Lee. And they go, and I said, oh, thanks for ringing because I've been waiting for you. And then they start talking, and then I go, no, it's not effing Lee. Rip into them. But it doesn't work.
It's probably the start to a romance scam for you.
Can I speak to you off record?
Off the record, yeah.
Do you think I was stupid that sending all my funds overseas? I was told that she loved me. So with fraud, where do you see the future? Like it's a growing industry, isn't it? When we talk the crime,
I think the best way you could encapsulate that is in the late 90s, Cole formed a cyber crime unit, which was just a small 2-man team. That was an adjunct to the Fraud Enforcement Agency or Commercial Crime Agency, whatever name it was going under at the time. And 20 years later, it's the cybercrime squad, fully resourced, only getting bigger. And it would be likely it could finish up with the cybercrime squad with a fraud unit attached to it. You know, I mean, that's where it's all happening.
That's where it's heading to.
Yeah, and they've got a very good level of expertise, but once again, that's a unit that gets pillaged by the private sector.
That's the thing. Like, it's you spend some time in there. For the private sector, it would be worth gold to them to have the skill set.
Absolutely.
So
I remember they were looking at one stage of trying to bring the private sector in, as opposed to having our people going out, and get to a stage where there was not only a cross-pollination of ideas, but also some funding arrangements where they could send their people down for a period of time to work with the cybercrime squad or the fraud squad. And I don't know. I've been gone for 4 years. I don't know how that went.
I think there was a bit of pushback about it, like, if it's a criminal matter, you can't have...
There's a lot of those issues raise their head, but you know what? If someone wants to do it, wants to get it done, it'll get done. Yeah. It's a dead set stroke of a pen job, and, all right, the risk management comes, back to the squad commander. How are you going to manage it?
But
if you want it to work,
can be managed.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think that's the way that probably they're going to have to end up going, because you just can't keep affording to plough your training dollars into building up a level of expertise to a certain point, and then
losing them.
Yeah, see you later. Enjoy your career.
I always think we build the skill set up with police, and then it's all or nothing with the police. Yeah, like you. By the time you left, you had all your skills. Why can't we bring you back to have a look at this investigation and that type of thing? But it's all or nothing. But
yeah, well, look, when I left, I had. I continued on basically with an offshoot of that Strike Force Ravens type stuff,
right?
Personal injury type stuff with an insurer. But I wouldn't have just wanted to retire straight up. Just go to nothing. Well,
you've got a business up at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been
about fraud investigation. What's it called?
Christie Optum Forensics. I'll give it a plug. Yeah.
How does that play out? What type of things are you doing?
It's probably how would it best be described. We've got a website presence there. We refer to ourselves as a boutique consultancy. I guess it's for all those people that might come into a situation where they're either being impacted by fraud or professional misconduct or basic general naughtiness in the workplace. We're in a position to be able to either offer advice, maybe dig down a bit further and prepare a mini brief or a report to go to the police.
Yeah,
I mean, it's notoriously difficult for the average punter to know how to report perhaps a complex fraud to the department. So we do a bit of that.
Well, there is a need for that, isn't there? Like it's
there's plenty out there doing it. It's a pretty clogged space, but when you look at it, as long as there's dollars floating around and somebody's prepared to want to have a go, they'll be trying. Wherever particularly a source of public money.
It makes it easier for the police too if someone turns up with the evidence there. Like it's very easy for police to.
Well, having been at that in that position, it's a lot easier to and a lot more efficient to investigate a matter that where the fundamentals have been prepared.
Yeah.
And that might just be something down to a financial reconstruction to show this is where the fraud occurred, and then the police can go and do their thing. But I guess I'd be at pains to say, and the police would never put their hands up and say, and if you don't do that, we won't take it on.
Yeah,
But the numbers are such that priority becomes an issue, and I think you've got a much better chance of getting things happening if everyone gets a head start, And
I had a friend who had a falling out with a business partner, and the first time he went to the police, it was no, this is a cil matter, and then he talk to me about it, and I'd go, well, it's not a civil matter. This person's clearly breaking laws here, and he's ripping the company off. And then it went back to the police, and it was still sort of in the range of civil. Then he spent some money on a solicitor, outlining what's there, and I gave a bit of advice, and eventually it got to the point where the police have picked it up and run with it, and it's resulted in a decision the right way, and the person was convicted. So
you're actually an old fraud detective in disguise, yeah.
I was a frustrated fraud. Like Dave, you would never have me, but would you? I tried.
You just didn't have the look.
I could have worn the pinstripe suit.
Would look good in a pair of braces.
I remember you and Jason Dickinson, making fraud. Going, no, this is where the action is. And trying to get me across there at one stage.
Dicko's never regretted going there.
It's his proudest moment.
One of his proudest moments. Yeah.
What do you put down to the type of personality type that you want for a good fraud investigator?
Oh, look.
Are they allowed to have a personality?
Yeah, look, I don't know that you can pigeonhole them, but I mean, it does lend itself, I suppose, to attention to detail from the investigative standpoint.
Yeah.
And there's some, obviously, I don't think you're going to go there if you're wanting the big rush, the thrill of the chase, the roaring through the front door. We used to have that cartoon there with the agony of acquittal at the end, and it's the same little man, that had gone right through the process. Yeah. His face never changed. He never looked any different. So they're probably fairly understated, the ones that make a career out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone that went there would ever regret going there for a period of time. I don't say you stay there forever, but there's things to learn,
I hate to say it from you might call me more of an old school detective, but I think those skills, you're going to need them more and more to investigate crimes, whether it be a murder or whatever, the cyber crime and fraud type skills that you need. So I think it is something of the future, and it might be the nerdy guy with the braces and the pinstripe suit that's bringing down the Mr. Biggs.
Oh, there's going to be any doubt about it.
Yeah. I
mean, I read that article of Tim O'Connor on the weekend, he's talking about the battle with drugs and all the rest of it. And is it a case of, are there different ways of doing things, and I don't think there's any doubt that looking at the financial capacity of crooks, as opposed to having to nail them in the act, looking at their financial status and focusing on that, nothing hurts them more.
Well, that was something that Strike Force Raptor did, looking at the bikies and looking at the financial side of things.
That's right.
Too. And that was, no one would call them, nerds or pussies, the Strike Force Raptor. But Dave Adney and a few of the others really set it up to look at all aspects of how you can attack organised crime. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it brought down, it was Mr. Big over in America all those years ago, wasn't it? It was the tax evasion that finished up sending him down where no one else could get him. Al Capone.
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
That's been going around.
Whole team of homicide detectives trying to track him down, and it was a bloke from Fraud Squad.
Exactly, yeah. We've hung our hat on that for years.
Well, Dave, I reckon that's we've finally given the fraud guys the recognition they deserve, and I think we'll... I
thought there must have been a ratings plunge. That's why you've had to call us in.
No. When I was pitching this, I said if anyone can make fraud sexy, it's Dave Christie. And but like all jokes aside, it's friendly rivalry between the squads and all that, and we give the fraud blokes a bit of stick and vice versa.
Exactly.
But full respect to you, 37 years in the cops, and I think it's come across in the podcast. You do make people laugh, and if you remembered for just one thing, it's the way that you put a smile on people's faces when things are under pressure, and we need that type. And sadly, I think upon your retirement and a few others, we're losing those characters in the cops. But full credit to you.
Very kind of you to say it. And if I did put a smile on some people's faces, well, then I'm a happy man. That's good.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks for that.